there's some specific reasons why we went after this project in the first place. And, I've had a long career as a geologist, and, I was in the investment business in England in the late 80s and as an entrepreneur. And going back to the summer of 1979, I was working as a student in geology and mineral exploration for Consolidated Goldfields in Cadillac, Quebec, and we had the opportunity to do an underground tour at the American Barrick's Camflo mine, which was the first mine for Barrick, and it created huge cash flow, which allowed them to go on and buy Goldstrike and become the giant company they are now. And I remember being struck, even as a student, with how efficient and cheap it was to mine gold in an intrusive. And intrusives are like, granites, for instance. And because of the competency of the wall rock, the rock surrounding the veins, it's much cheaper to mine, and you can mine at much lower grades. And as the Young Davidson mine it's about 40 kilometers down the road from the Moray property. And, their production is starting to tail off at Young Davidson. I noticed they released their third quarter numbers yesterday, and production has been slowing down because they're starting to, they did a huge underground expansion, and but they're starting to slow down. I mean, the mine's been running for a long time. So, they're really interested in trying to find sources of feed for the mill. The mill is running at 8,000 tons per day, but is permitted up to 12,000 tons per day. So they're very active in looking at similar style gold deposits. And this, again, the reason we picked this project was because it's a cyanide hosted, potential gold discovery. And there's already lots of evidence of gold in the cyanide. And Gordon Morrison has done a really good job. If you see this screen, this is Leapfrog. And he and Oryx out of Sudbury have done a lot of work on modeling out the potential size of the cyanide. And these, you can see it heads to the southeast. And this part is we know it's there because you can see it in the magnetics. And so it's a lot larger than the cyanide that hosts Young Davidson. Now, one should be careful that there's no linear correlation between the size of the cyanide and the size of the gold deposit. Obviously, the gold, a potential gold deposit is a function of structure and how much structure there is in the cyanide. And that part we don't know yet. So the purpose of the IP is we've started at the northern end. The blue lines are the survey lines, and the pinkish lines are where they run the current. So they run the current wires, not exactly on this line because they got to, they have to run them around roads and stuff like that. So they've started up here, and eventually, probably in 4 weeks, will cover the entire extent and postulated extent of the cyanide. But what I wanted to really communicate to you is that there was a survey done, an IP survey done in 2012 by SGX Resources. And you see the map that's starting to, as I highlight. And this is a chargeability map. When you do IP, you're measuring two things, chargeability and resistivity. Now, chargeability, unlike a typical EM survey, IP is most applicable where we're looking for, disseminated sulfides, not massive sulfides. And the style of deposit is relatively low amounts of pyrite, chalcopyrite, and galena. And where we've had gold mineralization in the cyanide, the sulfides are only maybe a max of 3 or 4%. So you have to have a geophysical technique that's designed to test for widely disseminated sulfides. And IP, I first, ran into IP at Hemlo in 1982, and it was instrumental in locating the deeper, parts of the ore body. And of course, now it's, evolved significantly. And now we're doing gradient IP, and you get a much broader exposure. But when you measure the chargeability, what they do is they turn on the current and they run the current for a certain period of time, then they turn it off. And what you're measuring is the rate at which the charge leaves the sulfide. And pyrite is very chargeable. So it will tend to, that rate of decay will be the slowest of the mineral, and the cyanide itself is not chargeable. The minerals that make up the cyanide are not chargeable. So it's the contrast between these widely disseminated sulfides and the host rock, which is not chargeable. And the other thing about the sulfides in the cyanide, outside of the cyanide, you could have pyrite, pyrrhotite, chalcopyrite, and have no gold. In the case of the sulfide mineralization within the cyanide, wherever we've seen sulfides within the cyanide, it carries gold. So it's the best technique to find disseminated sulfides. And we know, based on, Gore's done a lot of work on Young Davidson, that what we see on surface and our surface exposures, what they're mining underground is sulfides, particularly galena, which is a lead sulfide. And we notice the same thing where you get pyrite, you'll start to get anomalous gold. But if you get pyrite, chalcopyrite, and galena, you start to get, ore grade sort of numbers. So the big question is there enough structure to increase the vein density to come up with an ore body? And no one's, there has been no IP except this IP survey that you see on the leapfrog screen. And you see this sort of reddish, that's high chargeability. That's within the cyanide, and it's never been drill tested. That survey, the 2012 survey, ends here. Now our survey, as you can see, is going to cover not only the same area that was covered in 2012, but a lot more of it. So, we don't know, particularly outside of this area. We've done a lot of trenching here and a lot of stripping and trenching here. But other than that, the balance of the cyanide, we don't know how it's going to react. So, it's going to be a really interesting survey. And, we've been, in discussions with Alamos, well, this is sort of the second year. So they're aware of what we're doing. So this survey is really going to tell the tale, Gordon, I believe. If we start to see more chargeability highs like this one from the 2012 survey, then we're going to have some, some good drill targets. We may find, because of the size of the survey, we may find that we want to do, a more detailed IP survey within the current survey, just to flesh out our drill targets. It's going to be just a function of what we see. Within 4 weeks, we will start to see results. So it's going to be pretty interesting, and You know, we've got a producer down the road that needs feed. Now, this is, you know, there's no such thing as an instant deposit, except Hemlo. But we start to see the vein density and we start to see the disseminated sulfides, we will have gold because, you know, all the indications from Young Davidson and everything that we know on the surface, you see that disseminated pyrite, and particularly if you see chalcopyrite and galena, you'll start to get higher gold numbers. Okay, well, this is the southern part of the cyanide. And these are trenches this is the original Noranda trench, where there's a vein that's referred to as the Nor vein. We dewatered and resampled it 2 years ago. We've extended, all this is stripped area that we've done. And this hole, 80-5, is a Newmont hole from 1980. And this is the trace of the hole. And aside from the green bits here, those are volcanics. It's all in cyanide. And the assays were all redacted by Newmont, which was not uncommon at that time for a large company. But the log is quite interesting because there are there's 17 meters of core missing from the core for 80-5, which is in the Government Core Storage Library in Timmins. And the 17 meters that's missing is near the end of the hole. And you see that circle, that series of, sort of half circles is the chargeability high from the 2012 SGX Resources survey. And again, the survey ends right here. So we will know from our own survey, likely the chargeability high extends over and may explain why the 17 meters of core is missing. I mean, typically, big companies will take the best core and send it to head office, and anyway, it's gone. So we don't know, it's not there, but it's the most interesting part of the whole because there's a lot of galena. And galena is the real key mineral for higher gold numbers at Young Davidson. And we see exactly the same thing. We just this year discovered a new vein, which is sort of in here in the stripped area. And that vein, I've been up there a couple of times. Gord was with us for a site visit end of July. We have a Timmins-based geologist who, with his life and business partner, Shelley discovered this vein because they just happened to be washing off what we'd stripped before so that, it was presentable for the site visit. And anyway, Shelley discovered new vein. And the first time I looked at it in July, you could see the chalcopyrite. And then the next time I was just up there at the end of October 21st, and it'd been cleaned off a bit more and you could see the galena. And we took one sample which kicked like 2.2 grams. So 2.2 grams at Young Davidson is ore grade. That's what they mine. Because again, it's so cheap, because the wall rock is competent. It's not like, I had experience with another mine in the Timmins area, the Clavos mine, and the country rock was mafic volcanics and ultramafics. And the problem is when you have structures in that host rock, it all turns to friable mess because the host rock's not competent. In an intrusive, it doesn't go to flakes and mush and mess. It stays brittle, so you get the veining will go all over the place, and that makes it really cheap to mine. So this new vein, the Nor vein, we already we knew from the assessment reports and our own observation, it has chalcopyrite and galena, and we had a 5 gramish channel across a meter. So whenever you see, particularly Galena, you're going to get higher gold numbers. So it's the vein density that you need. We know there are gold-bearing veins in the cyanide. What we don't know yet is the vein density. You need the vein density to build up resource blocks. So the survey's going to be really important. You know, it's mineral exploration, it's gold. Gold is always tricky. But, you know, we went after this project for a specific reason. And, you know, we're about to find out. We know there's gold there, but it's a question of how much. And if we find anything of consequence, our neighbor's not going away. So they have a huge mill and they need feed. The other thing that's interesting is this kind of purplish stuff is ultramafic, and that's another. There's a break, you know, call it a fault or shear zone in here, and the presence of ultramafic rocks is a very good sign for gold. And there was a hole that Noranda put a hole in here in when was that set? Forget the date. 1965. And they, at the end of the hole, they had 6 grams ish over 3 meters, and the hole was ended in mineralization. And from Gord's work, that hole should, if he kept drilling, intersect the cyanide, and we know where that collar is. So it's one of our drill targets. The survey will bring us into the first week in December. We'll need some time to absorb the data. There's a technique that geophysicists use called creating inversions, which allows you to see the third dimension, you know, in your geophysical response. So, you know, we'll need some time to absorb the data. But in terms of, you know, there's drills available in Timmins. There's a geo in Timmins that has a core farm, core shack, sawing. He's an old friend of mine. So all the, you know, everything's available. It's a very, very easy place to work.